Hi there, my name is Alexander Matthews, Technical Software Sales Specialist for Toon Animation. And in this video, I'm going to show you some of the features that you have available to you in Toon Harmony 22. So I'm going to start off by opening my software. I'm going to choose to work offline. And here we have our welcome screen. From here, you can choose to name your scene. You can choose the location that you want it to be stored. You can also choose the resolution that you're going to be working with, and you have quite a few that you can choose from the very low resolution all the way up to 8K. Once you have made your selections here, you simply have to click Create Scene to create a new scene, or you can choose from one of the scenes that you have already been using in this list over here. So I'm going to open one now. And welcome to Toon Harmony 22. Here you can see our user interface, or our workspace. You can see that we have several different windows that you can work in or in between. These windows have different tabs that you can choose to use depending on what process you're doing in your animation pipeline. These tabs can be removed or added at any point. You also have a selection of toolbars that you have available to you. And once you have created your own unique and customizable workspace, you can very easily go to our workspace manager where you can save it so that you can share it with others or keep it if you happen to be moving between more than one workspace. You also have the option of going to scene settings. And from here, you can update the scene resolution of your scene. You can also define the color space that you're going to be working in. And when you define the color space, this makes sure that all of the different scenes that you have are consistent. New to Harmony 22, you now have the option of rendering at 32 bits per channel. And that basically covers the user interface, or workspace. And now we're going to have a look at some of the drawing tools that you have available to you. Okay, so let's have a look at the drawing tools that you have available to you. Now, even though Toon is well known for its vector technology, you can also work in bitmap within the software. Now, before I jump into the drawing tools, I'll let you know that we have a library available to us where we can save what is known as TPLs, or templates. Now, templates, or TPLs, those are created from anything that has been imported into the software or created in the software. These can be saved as the templates, and then they can be used by anyone that has access to that library folder at any point during the production. So I'm just going to drag a template from my library into my scene. Now you can see all of the different drawing tools that you have available to you. We have our bitmap brush, our vector brush, our textured vector brush, our vector pencil, and our textured pencil. To have access to your bitmap brush, you need to be using a bitmap layer. Once you do, it becomes available to you. You can go to your tool properties, where you can see that you have a number of presets already available to you. If you click on this button, you will bring up your bitmap brush properties, where you have several customizable options that you can use to create your own unique brush. We have our tip tab, our transparency tab, the dual tip tab, where you can add more than one texture to your brush. We already have textures here available to you. And you can also add a paper texture as well. From the tip tab, you can define the maximum and minimum size of your brush, the roundness and angle, pen tilt sensitivity, angle function, etc. If you click this button, you can actually define how the maximum and minimum size of your brush are generated, whether it be by the pressure, the pen pressure, the tilt or angle of your pen, or the speed at which you're drawing. You even have the option of inverting these selections here. So once you've created your customizable brush, it will be saved in your preset list. From there, you can export it to share with others, or keep it for yourself in case you have a favorite type of brush that you want to use. So now that we've had a look at our bitmap brush, let's have a look at the vector brush. We're going to be using a vector layer to show this off. So with the vector brush, if you go into your vector brush properties, you will see now that you have a brush type. We have solid vector as well as textured vector. You can see that we have some of the similar customizable options as we had with the bitmap brush that you can use to create your own unique brush. And we also have the addition of smoothing, which is something that I will touch on in a moment. So if we zoom in to our vector brush, and we're using our vector layer, we now have access to vector tool. So if I select this one, our contour editor, and I can zoom in, I can select my brush stroke, and from here I can actually go ahead and modify my stroke with the contour points and their Bezier handles, or by simply just dragging on the contour line itself. I can also use my center line editor, and now we can see that we have a center line that runs through the center of our brush stroke. Here I can use the Bezier handles to adjust this line. I can even add contour points along this line to adjust it that way as well. This also applies to our textured vector. Now from here, it may look very similar to our bitmap brush, but if I zoom in and I select my line, you can see that it is in fact a vector stroke. I can use my center line editor to adjust it, or I can use my contour editor to adjust it as well. With the center line editor, if you go into your tool properties, you can actually adjust the smoothness of your line using the center line smoothness slider here. So the less smooth that I make my line, the more control points I will have to modify my line with. And the more smooth I make it, the less control I have over the line in terms of contour points. So now that we've had a look at the vector brush, let's have a look at the pencil, which is one of the more flexible drawing tools that you have available to you in Toon Boom Harmony. With the pencil tool, you also have access to your contour editor. If I select my line, you can see that now my contour line runs through the center of my stroke. I can use this to adjust the line that way, or select the contour points and use the Bezier handles to adjust the line that way as well. Now the great thing about the pencil tool is once you have finished your drawing using a pencil tool, you can select this drawing and adjust the line right away. So I'm going to use my select tool, and I'm going to just select all of my lines. Now here in the tool properties, I can adjust the maximum size of my stroke. Ooh. Now from my tool properties, I can adjust the maximum size of my stroke like this. I can change the preset of the pencil that I was using. And I can also apply a texture to this line if I wanted to. Speaking of textures, we also have our textured pencil line. So with our textured pencil line, all of the tools that I would have used to adjust the normal pencil can be applied or used with the textured pencil. So I can use my contour editor to select and adjust my pencil lines, to select and adjust my textured pencil lines, whether it be by the actual stroke itself or the contour points and the Bezier handles. And if I wanted to, I can use my select tool, select all of my lines this way, go to drawing, convert pencil lines to brush strokes, and now my pencil lines have been converted to vector brushstroke. I can use my contour editor to adjust the lines just as I did before with my vector brush and my textured vector brush. So next up, we're going to have a look at our cutter tool, which is a very handy tool when you want to quickly clean up any of your drawings. So now here we have an example of a character with several overhanging and overlapping lines. I'll just zoom in here to give you a closer look. And I'm going to select my cutter tool from my toolbar. In my tool properties, I have the option of multiple lines cutting gesture. With this option selected, I can easily slash across several lines at once to get rid of them very quickly, just like this. But you also have the option of single line cutting gesture, where only one line will be cut at any one time. So as I said, this tool is very handy when it comes to cleaning up your drawings very quickly. So now that we've had a look at the different draw tools that we have available to you, let's clean up this drawing here. I'm actually going to select a layer that I want to draw on, and I'm going to turn on my light table, which will wash my sketch for me. I'm going to select my pencil tool, and I'm going to zoom in a bit. And if you have issues with drawing smooth lines, we have stabilizers available to you to help you get those lines looking nice and crisp. To find them, you can right-click and go to your pen settings. And now you have access to our stabilizers. And you can move this around to anywhere that makes it more comfortable for you. You have access to the average stabilizer. With the average stabilizer, this will take the average direction of the stroke you're drawing and apply smoothness to the line. I'll just choose a thicker pencil. And you can see that it has a slight delay as the software takes the average direction of your brush stroke and applies smoothness to the line. You also have access to a pull string. With the pull string, what the software does, it adds a little leash to the end of your stroke, which allows you to guide your pencil line along behind it. So you can see the little line there, and I can pull my line to get that nice smooth curve to my cleanup. I can then use my cutter to clean up my lines very quickly like that. Now, new to Harmony 22, if you wanted to add texture to your lines, we now have a new feature. And that feature is, if you're using textured pencil, the texture is actually applied in real time while drawing your lines. This is very handy if you want to get an idea of what your line is going to look like while you're drawing it. In previous versions, the texture would be applied after you have finished drawing your line. We also have our line tool, and from the tool properties, you can choose different auto-generated curves to help you get your lines drawn. We have the straight line. We also have an auto-generated curve. And with this, I simply draw and curve my line this way by either pulling or pushing my line and clicking once again to set it. And you also have the S-curve mode, where I can draw my line, curve in one direction, and curve in another. And you can see that it is not quite what I want, but that's easily rectified by clicking my contour editor, adding a contour point to my line, and adjusting it this way. And that pretty much covers the drawing tools that you have available to you in Toon Boom Harmony. Okay, so now we're going to have a talk about paperless animation in Harmony. So Harmony has very close integration with Toon Boom's pre-production software, Storyboard Pro. With Storyboard Pro, you can create storyboards and animatics and then export those scenes as Harmony scenes. That way you cut out the need to add your animatics and your storyboards to your scenes so that your animators have direction to follow. But if you don't do that, you can also just add your storyboards to your scenes via template, which I've done here. So here we see our character in a little bar, and I'll play the animatic for you. So you can see that we have several key poses from our storyboard right here ready for us to animate with. So let's bring in some rough animation to see how it was achieved. So I'll drag my roughs from my library, and I'll just jump back to frame 1. So it's a little difficult to see the roughs here, but I'm just going to jump to my layer. And once I do that, you can see that my light table has washed my image for me. But it's still a little bit busy, so I'm just going to disable my animatic layer and play the rough animation for you. So to help you with creating your animation, Toon Boom Harmony has two options, our X sheet and our timeline. If you're familiar with the traditional methods of animation, you will be familiar with the look of the X sheet. From here, you can add new drawings. If I select my drawing here, you can determine which frames or drawings will be exposed on which frame. You can add new drawings or duplicate drawings. You can even select a drawing and mark it, say, as a key drawing, like so, or as a breakdown, like this, for example. Now, anything that you do on your X sheet can also be accomplished on your timeline. So from my timeline view, I can actually turn on thumbnails so that I have a better understanding of the drawings that I'm working with. I can right-click and I can add my Mark Drawings toolbar, where I can go ahead, select my drawing, and continue to mark them as I did with my X sheet. Now I'll just create a new drawing. And when doing paperless animation, it's always helpful to see the frames before and after the frame that you're currently working on. And Toon Boom Harmony has an onion skin to help you with that. I'll select my onion skin. And now with this slider, I can choose the amount of frames that I want to see before and after the current frame that I'm working on. We also have an advanced onion skin that you can use. And with our advanced onion skin, you can decide whether you want to view your onion skins by frames or by drawings. If you're working with drawings, you can actually decide if you only want to see your key drawings or your breakdown drawings. So I just want to see my key drawings. And from here, I can also decide to adjust the opacity of my onion skins from here. And I can also decide I want to see my breakdowns as well. If I go back on my timeline, I can see a bit more of what I would have marked before. If I'm working with frames, I can turn on this option and decide which frames on either side I want to see. I can decide I don't want to see any of the previous drawings and only the future drawings that I have. And I can adjust the opacity of all of them, or individual ones, from my sliders here. And once you've done your rough animation, then you go on to cleanup. So I'm going to go back to my library, and I'm going to drag my clean animation into my scene. I'll just disable my rough animation, and I'll play my clean animation for you. Now, once you finish cleaning your animation, the next step will be coloring your animation. Now, Toon Boom Harmony has a very powerful color palette system where each of the color swatches that have been created in those color palettes will have their own unique color ID. I can jump to my color. I can choose my palette. And you can see the number of colors that I can have within my palette here. But to help me color my characters, I might need a reference. And Toon Boom Harmony also has a tool for that as well. I can click on my tab here, and I can choose my reference view. Now from here, I can actually add a color reference of my character that I can use to sample colors to help me paint my character. I can go to my library, and I can simply drag and drop into my reference view like that. And I can even zoom in and pan within my reference view as well. And new to Harmony 22, you also have the option now of adding bitmap references to your reference layer. Also with your reference view, the references that you've added to your scene will be saved so that you don't have to keep adding them every time you have entered the scene that you're working with. You can simply right-click and choose Load Default References to bring in any references that have been stored within your reference view. So now I have my reference there. Let's start painting our character. I'll just go on my Color tab, and I'll select a color. And you can see that it jumps directly to the color that I have picked from my reference view. Now I'm going to jump into a different tab, my Drawing tab. And I'm going to find the layer that I want to work with. Now you can see that we have different art layers that we can use. Right now we're on our line art layer. If I jump to my color art, we can see the paintable areas that have been created by sampling the line art. I can very easily select these and delete them. And by clicking this tool here, I can create my color art by referencing the line art layer. Now I can select my color and use my paint tool to paint my character. I can very easily drag to fill my character. And if I use Paint Unpainted, I can paint areas of my character like this. And if I wanted to paint his satchel strap, I can very easily now just drag across my colors like this, and it will only fill the areas that do not have any paint within them. Now, it's one thing to paint each frame by itself, but that is time consuming. So you also have an option with combining these tools together to paint several frames at the same time. So let's jump on to another frame. We'll go back to our camera view, and you can see that we still have our onion skin selected. So I'm going to go to my tool properties. I'm going to select this option here, which is Apply to All Frames for my Paint Unpainted tool. And with my color art selected and my onion skin turned on, I can reference a color, and I can very easily drag across my onion skins like this. And if I turn it off, I can now scrub my timeline, and I can see that several frames have been painted at the same time. And this is a very, very quick way to paint several frames at once, saving you the hassle of selecting a frame by frame by frame. Now let's bring in our finished animation. It's going to clear up my node view. And I'm going to drag and drop my finished animation into my scene. Jump to frame 1 and play it for you. And once you've finished your animation, there may be cause to change a color of your character or of your animation. With the color IDs that I spoke about previously, this is very easy. This is because even if there are two of the same colors within your color palette, they will have their own unique ID. And with this ID, the software is able to track that color across the animation. So I can decide to loop my animation like this. I can go to my color tab, And maybe I want to see what he would look like with different color hair. I can double click on my hair color, and then I can easily just drag around my color picker to change his hair color like this. And as you can see, the color updates in real time. As you can see, that is a very quick way to easily change colors within your animation without having to do it frame by frame. And now let's have a look at how you can actually very easily create your own backgrounds within Harmony with the use of a very special tool. Now, there will be cases where you actually want to create your backgrounds within Harmony without having to use an external software. And these backgrounds might have some perspectives. And if you're like me and have trouble drawing perspectives, this guide will be a very big help for you. And these are our perspective guides. If I click this button here, I can see that I have several to choose from. These can be customized and then exported and then imported into other scenes so that other people can use them. And we have two here that I want to use. So I have my 2-point table perspective, and I need to have a drawing tool selected in order to see my guides. And if I zoom out, we can see all of the vanishing points that I have available to me, as well as the horizon line. I can easily unlock my guides and shift these around. I can undo any changes that I've made and then move the horizon line by itself, for example. But once I have created a perspective guide that I'm okay with, I can lock it. I can then use my pencil tool. Let's make sure that we have a nice pencil to work with. If I zoom in now and go back to my Guides tab, I have selected here to align my drawing tool with my guide. So with this enabled, I can actually go ahead and draw my table using my guides like this. I can switch between my guides very easily to say, now I want to draw my window. So with my new guides, I have the option of drawing my windowsill here. And if I wanted to take a break and say draw my character, for example, if I was doing some cleanup as well, I can disable my guides, can zoom in, and use my stabilizer to get a nice finger drawn here. And I can turn my guides back on and go back to actually creating my backgrounds. So this is a very great tool to use if you're creating your backgrounds within Harmony. And now let's have a look at actually importing images into our scene. Now, there will be cases where you want to create your background in an external software. Toon Boom Harmony allows you to import different file formats, whether it be flat formats like JPEGs, PNGs, BMPs, but you also have the option of importing multi-layered images such as PSDs. Now, if you're importing a PSD, Harmony will actually preserve the layer structure of that image on import. To import files, you can either go to File, Import, Images, or you can simply click on your Import Images button here. You can select the file that you want to import. You have several options that you can choose from to determine how that file will be imported. And you can also define the color space of that file on import as well. Now, I have created a template of the background, so I'm just going to bring that in right now. And here is our background that has been created in Photoshop. If I go into my group, you can see that I have several different layers within that group, and each of these layers can be selected and modified separately from the other. Now, even though you're working in primarily 2D within Toon Boom Harmony, these 2D images actually exist within a 3D space. To see this, I can go to my perspective view. And if I zoom out, I can actually rotate to show you that these layers are existing on different levels within the Z depth. This can allow me to create a very interesting effect by using a camera. I'll go back to my camera view. I'll come down to my timeline, and I'll add a camera, and I'll add a peg to that camera. Using my transform tool, I'm going to add a keyframe. I'll add another keyframe at frame 30. I'll extend my playback. And on frame 1, I'm just going to zoom out slightly. On frame 30, I'm going to zoom in and move my camera. And even just by doing this, you can see something happening. Now I can add some motion keyframes between my two keyframes. And if I scrub, you can see that there is some parallax happening between my two keyframes. I can increase this by shifting my camera. And now if I play, you can see that the hills seem to be rolling as the camera moves towards them. This is the multiplaying effect that can be achieved by having your layers existing on different levels of Z depth within the 3D space. So now that we've had a look at this, we have our background in our scene. Let's have a talk about the pre-production process of cutout animation, character rigging. So cutout animation is a type of animation which uses character puppets or character rigs. So let's have a look at one now. I have one in my library, so I'm just going to drag and drop into my scene. And here we have our character rig. Now, a character rig is made up of several different parts, and they're created from character turnarounds or character designs which have been created in the design phase. I can use my transform tool to select any of these parts and move them independently of other parts if I so chose, like this. But what also happens in rigging is that you create a hierarchy within your puppet. This can be viewed from the node view. I can jump into my rig group, and I can expand this view so that you have a look at what a puppet hierarchy looks like. Now, this is known as a rig hierarchy. It's basically like a family tree where you have pegs which are parented to drawings, and then those pegs will also have parents. So as you go up the hierarchy, whatever sits above will have control of what sits below it. So I can use B and Shift B on my keyboard to move up and down my peg hierarchy. So I can control, say, her forearm here, and then I can adjust the upper arm like this. I can undo that, and I can jump onto this side and pose her this way. I can shift it around to get a better pose. like this. Now with rigging, there are also other tools that you can apply to your character rig to help your animators. For example, deformers. So I can click on my finger here, and I can zoom in and click this button to view the deformer that has been applied to this finger. Now, this is a bone deformer, and these circles here represent the different joints of that finger. I can use the deformer to curl the finger like this, and I can even modify the range of influence of the joint with this node here. I can also select the thumb, turn on the deformer here, and you can see now that this is a curved deformer. It doesn't have any joints as before, but I can very easily manipulate the drawing like this without actually having to redraw the actual drawing. I can jump up here to the hair. I can show the deformer here, and this is a weighted envelope deformer. And as you can see, we have some texture that has been applied to this drawing. But with the weighted deformer, this texture is actually deformed very nicely with the deformer without any fracturing or breaking of the texture. So deformers are a great tool to use for your animators so that they can manipulate and pose the character without actually having to redraw each and every frame. This is one of the benefits of using a puppet with cutout animation. Another type of deformation tool is the point kinematic output. I can select this air and turn on or view the deformer here. And by manipulating this deformer, you can see that the airing actually moves as well. This is because it has a point kinematic output applied to it right here. So it will always follow the deformation of the air as it is modified. You also have the option of adding constraints to your rigs, which simulates the type of IK rigging that you might see within a 3D model. I can get rid of this example here. I can go into my library and bring in my IK rig. By selecting her foot, I can very easily move this foot around, and you can see that it actually also affects the knee joint. And then I can select the knee joint and shift this around, and you can see that the foot remains anchored to the ground while the knee actually affects the upper leg and the lower leg as well. So this is just another great tool that you can use or apply to your rigs to help your animators to pose out their characters for their animation. So now I'm going to get rid of this rig and show you how easy it is to do some cutout animation in Toon Boom Harmony. So when doing cutout animation in Toon Boom Harmony, there may be cases where you have multiple animators on your team, and each of those animators would have done a specific set of animation for the scene that you're currently working on. And you might want to pull these animations and build the scene yourself. And that's very easy to do in Harmony with the use of templates, or as they're actually known as action templates. So this character has a walk cycle that has been created for it. So I'm going to drag it from my library and apply it to my timeline. When I do this, you can see that the character snaps into position, and I can play it to show you the walk cycle in action. Now I can easily make her walk off screen. We have a keyframe here already. And I'm going to jump to frame 60, add another one. I can get rid of this one. And at frame 60, I'm just going to drag her off screen. I'll jump back to frame 1 and add some motion keyframes between them. When I hit play, you can see that she is now walking off screen. I can turn on my control here so I can see her 3D path. And if I wanted to, I can very easily add a point along my path to change where she's going to walk. And if I play now, you can see that she follows the adjusted 3D path. And by using this 3D path, this is very handy if your character is moving around an object in your background that you have created with different layerings in Z-depth. You can actually bring your character forward in Z-depth so that it will move around the actual drawing. And this basically covers the cutout animation. Now we can have a look at a more advanced type of character rig. So the previous rig that you saw was a more basic character rig, but when rigging, you can actually apply what is known as master controllers to the rig to help your animators as well. So here we have a rig which is known as a 360 rig. If I scrub my timeline, you can see that the character has different views that has been created for it. In this camera window, we see the master controllers that have been added to the character. I can use my turnaround 5-point slider to actually rotate my character through her different views. I can jump to my blinks, and by turning this on, if I zoom in here, I have a slider that controls both her eyes, or one at a time. If I went to her 3/4 front view, I can turn on the 3/4 blink and have the animation for this blink here with both or each eye separately. I can go back to my front view and use my mouth master controller to cycle through her different mouth positions. And with the head master controller, I can use this to actually move her head into several different positions very easily and very quickly. Whoops. So it's important to know that master controllers don't actually create these things by magic. You actually have to create the different poses for these positions, and then the master controller will reference these positions or peg information while you're moving the control around the grid. And it's important to know as well that you're not confined to just using the master controllers once it has been applied to the rig. You can easily go up and down the rig hierarchy as well to pose out your character. So that basically covers the advanced rigging. And now let's have a look at some of the compositing that you can do in Toon Boom Harmony. So you can also do compositing from within Toon Boom Harmony. And this is great because you don't necessarily have to export all of your scenes and then do the compositing in a separate software. And one thing that you can note about the power of a software is the amount of nodes that you have available to you to do compositing with. So let's have a look at them. I can go to my node library. I can select my search bar, and now you can see the number of compositing nodes that you have available to you from within Toon Boom Harmony. You have the ability to add filters, as well as the ability to create particle effects from within Harmony as well. And if you're familiar with OpenFX, you also have the ability to use OpenFX plugins from within Harmony as well. So now, let's have a look at a scene that has no compositing added to it. Okay, so now that we've seen that, let's actually add some compositing and some effects to that scene. So I have a template of the scene in my library, which I'm going to bring in to my camera view. I can go to my timeline, And let's jump to frame 100, where we can actually see the sign, the neon sign. I'm going to go to my render view, and let's get rid of the color card as well. Now here is the sign without any effects added to it. I can go into my group, locate my sign drawings here, and we have a group here which has all of the effects nodes that I want to apply to my sign. I can select it and activate it. And now we can see all of the nice lighting effects that have been added. We have glow effects, blur effects, blending effects that have been added to the different drawings. And we can jump down further on our timeline. And we can add some effects to the background here. If I go into this group, we can see that we have some blur effects added as well, and some transparency to give this some nice lighting. And further down on our timeline, we can actually apply some tones and highlights to our character. So I can select these and enable them. And if I jump into the tone and highlight, we can have a look at this apply peg transformation here. I'll go back to my OpenGL view. And by selecting this peg, I can move around what has been created with the apply peg transformation. By dragging my character from my composite, I have created an instance of that character above the character rig. With this, I can move it around. And this is actually creating a matte to apply the highlights to my character. And this is easily animated by use of the peg. I can go back to my render view, and I can see the effects that it has been applied to the character here. Now I can come down to frame 490 and have a look at our bad guy. And I can turn on some of the effects from here as well. And we can see we have some nice lens flare from his eyes and some nice blurs that have been added to the background. And even though we have nodes within the node view already, which can be activated or deactivated to apply different effects, you can actually create templates of these nodes to simply drag and drop into your node view. And with this, I can actually show off one of the new blur effects available to you in Toon Boom Harmony 22, the bokeh blur. So I'm going to drag it into my node view, and I'm going to snap it onto my BG here. And you can see all of the blur effects that have been added to the background. So what the bokeh blur effect does, it actually simulates the effect that the camera lens would have on autofocus images based on the iris of that lens. You actually have some control over this by going into the layer properties, and you can actually change the shape type from here. So if I wanted it to look like a star, you can see that it has changed it to a star here. And I can actually decide how many sides I want to the star, for example. And these are just some of the options that you have with the bokeh effect. Now let's have a look at what the completed compositing will look like for this scene. And that's just some of the features that you have available to you with compositing in Toon Boom Harmony. Next, we'll have a look at how we can work with 3D within the software. So with Toon Boom Harmony, you also have the option of working with 3D within your scenes. So let's have a look at that. Here we have a living room with our character sitting down on a couch, and let's play the animation to see what it looks like. So as you can see, these are 3D elements and 2D elements existing within the same space. By using my perspective view, I can actually rotate my scene to show the different areas within the 3D environment. And from the camera view, you can actually apply an ortho lock to your 2D characters. So what the ortho lock does, it makes sure that the 2D elements are always facing the camera, even as the camera is moving within the 3D space. So if your 3D model has subnodes within it, it's easy enough to view them and work with them using the 3D Graph tab. Using your transform tool, you simply have to click on your 3D model to view a list of the different subnodes that you can work with. You can easily select or search for a subnode using our search bar. And I can work with, say, this soda can. Now we can see that I have a bounding box around this, and I can rotate it on the different axes like this. And you can also animate these separately from the rest of your model as well. Now, Harmony allows you to work with several different 3D file types, from FBX to OBJ to ABC files. And we have a node called the Maya Batch Render node, which allows you to actually use Maya to render out the textures of those 3D models, while Harmony deals with rendering the 2D aspects of the scene. So let's have a look at what this will look like on a fully rendered scene. Wasn't that fun? So now that we have compiled all of this stuff in Harmony, from our 3D models to our 2D animation, let's talk about export. All right, so let's have a look at some of the export options that you have available to you from within Toon Boom Harmony. We can easily go to File, Export, to see our export list. Now we can render to movie, animated GIF, SWF. You can even render out your OpenGL frames, audio, layout images, and even layout images from selection. Most likely, you'll be rendering from your write nodes. Now, your write nodes are nodes that can be found or viewed within your node library and added to your node network. And with the write nodes, you can actually define the type of export that you want to have. So if I go into my node view, I can have a look at my write node here. So from here, you can see you can define the color space that you're going to export to. You can choose to export an image sequence where you can define the frames that you're going to export, or you can export to movie. Now, if you're exporting an image sequence, you can choose to export to EXR format, which then allows you to export at 32 bits per channel. By using these write nodes, you can also easily separate parts of your scene to be exported separately. And those can then be carried into other external softwares where you can add some effects to them and then re-import them back into your scene for another final export. And that's basically covers the export options that you have with Toon Boom Harmony. If you have any further questions or need any further information, please feel free to visit www.toonboom.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more videos just like this. So thanks for being here with me, and I hope you enjoyed it.